Our guest this week is Dave Marlon. He just completed a doctorate degree in psychology. He holds 2 master's degrees, an MBA, and a Master of Counseling from UNLV. He's been a CEO of 2 healthcare companies, built one of the most successful addiction recovery centers in the country, and founded Vegas Stronger, a nonprofit dealing with homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse recovery. He's climbed 30 mountains, including Mount Everest and Denali. He competed in 2 Ironmans. He's run 7 marathons, including the Boston Marathon, where he pushed his longtime friend with MS in a wheelchair. He's also been featured as an interventionist on A&E's Emmy-award-winning show, Intervention. He's been clean and sober for 18 years and has personally been involved in the addiction recovery for thousands of individuals. He's a married father with 2 sons and enjoys fitness, traveling, and boxing.
If you're a man that controls his own destiny, a man that is always in the pursuit of being better, you are in the right place. You are responsible. You are strong. You are a leader. You are a force for good. Gentlemen, you are the Alpha, and this is the Alpha Quorum.
Welcome back to the Alpha Quorum Show. Brad Singletary here. You guys, this is episode 110. We're starting season 4. I can't believe how far we've come over the last 6 years. Today is a very special day for me, and I want to introduce our guest here in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about how I met him. I had known about him a long time in the professional world, and during COVID, I relapsed on alcohol. I had many years of sobriety and, several different periods of like 10 years. And then with COVID, I thought the world was ending. The communists were taking over. China was poisoning everybody. And I just was, and I was very busy. I was working about 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to help people in their mental health. And so it became very stressful and I relapsed. And that became sort of problematic again, as it always has for me. And I reached out on a Facebook group of therapists here in Las Vegas and asked about a meeting for professionals. I knew I wanted to attend a 12-step program. And as I had taught about that throughout my career to people looking to do that, but I'd never really participated much myself. So I asked the question, and this guest today answered right away, told me about a meeting that he attends and invited me very warmly. And I got to that meeting and I met some of the most amazing people ever, including his wife, Carolina, who is here today with us, just joining us. She's here to give Dave the old knock it off sign if he's gets out of hand. So appreciate you both being here, man.
Thank you.
So just want to talk about Dave here. He is a recovery and mental health advocate. He's been a CEO of 2 healthcare companies, each of those growing dramatically under his leadership. He founded and built one of the most successful addiction recovery centers in the country here in Las Vegas. After successfully addressing his own struggles with substance abuse and realizing that he was uniquely suited to help others, he began these programs. He's been consistently recognized by his peers as a leader in his field. He's the president of the Southern Nevada Association of Addiction Professionals and received the 2018 National Advocacy Award from NADAC, the Association for Addiction Professionals. He's locally been recognized as a graduate of the Leadership Las Vegas program with the Mayor's Commendation. He received the Community Counseling Center of Southern Nevada's Vanguard Award. He served on the Governor's Substance Abuse Working Group, and his work in the recovery sector earned him the Inspired Excellence Award from Las Vegas Heals. He founded the CARE Coalition and the Solutions Foundation, both of which combat substance abuse in Southern Nevada. He serves on the boards of Help of Southern Nevada and the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. He also helped establish Mission High School, the first public recovery high school in the nation. And he's been featured on multiple episodes and multiple seasons of A&E's Emmy-award-winning show, Intervention. Gentlemen, please welcome to the Alpha Quorum headquarters, Dave Marlon. Dude, I'm so glad to have you here, man. I can't even believe this. So Dave's been working with me on my recovery for several years. I actually haven't been in touch with him as much lately, but this is the first time we met in person because I started that during COVID. And so I can't believe how good looking you are.
Well, it's a real honor to spend this hour with you, Brad. I'm a big fan of the message of your show. I'm also a big fan of you and the way you are a husband and a dad, as well as a helping professional. So I'm humbled to be here.
I got to tell you guys, I've had some of the most spiritual experiences of my life, and I would consider myself a pretty spiritual person, and raised in a faith tradition and so forth. But I had some of the most spiritual experiences of my life talking with Dave Marlon on the telephone. I remember one day in particular, we were taking turns reading from some recovery literature, and I just choked up. I just had this amazing experience. And whenever I struggle, I haven't struggled as much with temptation or desire to go back, but whenever I struggle just in my life, I think about some of our conversations and how you talked me off the ledge and just helped me. So I just counted up, I have 938 days of sobriety. So
Wow.
All thanks to your invitation. I really appreciate you for that, man. That's I have a lot of love and respect for you.
It's all you and your hard work, though. I'm honored.
So before we get into addiction stuff, so this season is going to be about addiction and addiction recovery. But before we get into that and some of your story there, I'm curious about some of your other accomplishments. I know you've talked about Mount Everest and Denali. Tell us some of the cool things that you've done just as a man exploring the world.
I learned as a therapist that self-care is something really important. And like you, I see lots of clients and I put a lot into my work and taking care of people. And I learned that I need to take care of myself, because if our cup is empty, we can't fill someone else's cup. And I'm also good at rationalizing. So I began a habit of 3 or 4 times a year disconnecting and climbing a big mountain. And I've climbed about 30 big mountains on, I guess it would be 6 of the 7 continents. There's Mount St. Vincent is still looming down in Antarctica. I haven't done that one yet, but it's on my short list. I want to tell you, just before I married Carolina, we went we flew to Kathmandu, and we then took a tiny plane to a little airport called Lukla. And then from Lukla, we began a 7-day hike up to base camp, or Everest base camp. And that's at about 20,000 feet.
Oh my gosh.
Most people take a few rest days to acclimatize on the way, but we were doing it during a spring break. So her and I were trucking the whole time. But there were a bunch of amazing things happened. Each of us at one point began to have trouble breathing. And it happened on different days. But when it happened, the other one ended up helping settle the other one down. And it was really a bonding moment that was very special. Another thing happened was the last 2 days, it was a whiteout blizzard the entire time. And Carolina and I are hiking for 8 hours in a blizzard. And I don't know if it was the altitude, but I became a little delirious. I started singing crazy songs. I was making up rap tunes. Carolina was laughing her head off. And when we got to the hut, I stopped and I made a little video of the two of us. And I was like, "Hey, honey, isn't this a fun vacation? Being in a whiteout blizzard?" And Carolina was like, "Yeah, sure." But it was just a really special time. And after that time together, as I learned the grit and how tough this lady is, it was unquestionable to me that this was my life partner. And just after climbing Everest, we got married.
Wow. Nothing like something like that to cement your relationship together. So you did Mount Everest, Denali, and then what was this 500-mile thing you did recently?
St. James was one of the apostles.
Right.
And it is there's, I think there's 3 major Catholic pilgrimages. One of them is to the Compostela de Santiago, where you start in France in the Pyrenees Mountains, and then you hike for 500 miles to a church, which is where the remains of St. James is. And about 500 pilgrims start this journey each day. And I happen to have had the blessing of walking with the fastest pilgrim. Every morning, Carolina was trucking, and we walked through some of the most beautiful Spanish countryside, streams and rivers, woods and fields, and it was just a magical experience. I had several significant epiphanies on the way, and
Wow.
one of them I feel compelled to tell you right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
In the 3rd week, I'm walking along on this amazing road, and there's poppies as far as you could see on either side. Absolutely beautiful. And I'm walking in front of Carolina, and Carolina calls out to me. She's like, "David, why are you cursing and waving your arms?" And I was like, oh, I didn't notice. And then she said, "What's going on?" And I said, I was thinking about a situation at work. And it was really interesting how all of us can get caught up in our thoughts. And that here I was in this most beautiful place, really doing this meditative walk for 500 miles. And it really, TV and the internet and all the external things from life, they were all muted. They were taken away. So my thoughts became much, much clearer. And the fact that I had let, some annoyance from work creep in and kind of get under my skin, it really helped to illuminate that and help remind me what being mindful was, and that I should just take a breath. And I assure you, the person at work wasn't thinking about me at the time. So there was really no benefit for me getting worked up. And instead, just to breathe, to appreciate God's grace and the natural beauty around us, and to continue to walk. So it was really helpful to improve my mindfulness going on this pilgrimage. I recommend it for everyone.
Oh man, as soon as I saw you talking about that, I just thought how amazing that must be. How long was that? You said 3 weeks?
We did it in 33 days.
Wow.
Which is pretty quick. Most people do it in about 40.
Oh my goodness.
It's a 500-mile walk.
Wow. And you've done some marathons and stuff too. Did I see something about you like push someone in a marathon or something like that?
I've done 7 marathons. I ran 2 Ironman, and about 40 just triathlons. But the Boston Marathon was one of the ones on my list. But you have to qualify. And at my age, I needed to run a 3:20 marathon. And to me, I don't think my Sicilian frame goes 3:20, 26.2 miles. So a friend of mine who has MS, who I went to high school and college with, and we remain dear friends to this day. He has MS and he's in a wheelchair. And we were talking, and I said, "Hey, how about I'll push you?" And he said, "I'd love to." So I ended up getting what's called a matron bib to be an official participant of the Boston Marathon. And I got to push my buddy for 26 miles. And it was amazing. There's this one hill by one of the universities when you're coming into Boston where, you've been running for 20 miles, you're tired, but all of a sudden the air of the ocean and the energy of Boston starts kind of infecting the crowd and the runners. And when that came over me, it felt like I could keep running forever. And it was a really great feeling and an amazing experience. Now, this was before the horrific bombers ended up really, blemishing that race with terror. But I'm grateful I got to run the Boston Marathon. Man,
this is exactly, you can tell why we have this guy on here. I remember when I was in some of the meetings and I asked another participant, I didn't know how it worked to get a sponsor. And so I asked someone that I connected with in the group, that I was thinking about asking Dave, but I realized how busy he is. He's involved in all these things. He's got all these companies and all these responsibility and just very active and running meetings with AA. And so I wasn't sure. And she said, "Go for it." She said, "You would be very blessed to have time with him, and it's going to choke me up before we're done today, I'm sure. But that definitely was true. I couldn't believe how often you would answer the phone. I couldn't believe how often you pulled me out of my craziness. So anyway, I want to jump in here to addiction. And so really, we just want to introduce the topic of addiction recovery, maybe for the man, who I'm going to send this episode to, he's got some trouble in his life. He doesn't think it's that big of a problem. Maybe he's had a couple of crazy situations, but Dave, I didn't mention this in the introduction, but he also has a bachelor's degree in economics from State University of New York, a master's in business administration, and a master in counseling from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And there was some doctoral work there. I didn't know where you were with that.
I just finished a doctorate in psychology.
Just finished. 7 marathons, Mount Everest, Denali, anyway, now he's got a PhD in psychology. So
it's a PsyD, which is a little easier than a PhD.
Dave told me one time what his consultation fee is. I won't say that. I won't put that on the recording, but as soon as he told me his fee for consulting with medical groups and things, I knew I had to listen to everything he had to say. So tell us, man, I wanted you to kind of take it away from here. Just, your process. How did you become addicted? How did you get through recovery? The things that you've learned, what's been meaningful along the way, and maybe not just your experience, but what you've seen in other men that you've worked with, what people are like, and how this stuff goes. So how did you get to this point when it comes to addiction and recovery? And what can you teach us about men changing their lives?
Thanks. It's a bunch of different directions I can go here. Fortunately, in my 18 years clean and sober, I've now run 3 different programs as the CEO. I also helped build the chemical dependency unit in Desert Parkway Hospital. And I've helped over 10,000 patients get clean. So I'm going to call myself an expert at addiction treatment. However, to start here, I think the most important thing I could tell you what happened to me, because it was the most profound thing that's happened in my life. And I've, done some physical accomplishments. I've held my new son right as he was cut out of his mother. I've got glasses for the first time and saw the world was much different than I thought. I've had a bunch of beautiful things that have occurred to me in my life. Speaking of beautiful, I talked a lot about Carolina, but by far the most beautiful thing that happened to me was when I became free of drugs and alcohol. And what I thought it was a substance issue. I thought, I just like beer.
Yeah.
I thought I liked to party. I'm a party animal. And I always tried to, be a good boy and take care of work and take care of family responsibilities in the house and the car, whatever I got to do. But when it was my time, I like to get drunk. You've heard about the cheese, that was my cheese. That was my reward. So whatever I did, I generally, in the rear view mirror, I was always looking at, when do I have a window where I could go do what I wanted? And when you ask Dave what he wants to do, I want to, crack open cold beers and knock them back. Now, what I didn't realize was underneath the surface of that was fear and ego. And I was a philosophy major in college until I switched to economics. And I was really always I called myself a seeker. I was trying to figure out, what's the answer? What are we doing here? And as long as I stayed in a state of fear and a state of ego, that the spirit was blocked out. Of course, I wanted a solution to put into me to dampen the fear, to quiet my ego. But those 2 things were just below the surface that if you would have asked me in the first 40 years of my life, I would have had zero acknowledgement. I would have told you I'm afraid of nothing, and I would have told you I'm a humble guy. Probably the humblest guy you've ever met. But as I as I got clean, and to me, I had to wave the white flag, which is really hard for a never say die guy like me. To get me to say, okay, I will go to rehab. I had to be beaten. And I'm grateful that happened. Now, there's something that happened along the way, because in the beginning, when I drank some beers, I wanted to hang out with everybody. I wanted to buy everybody else beers, and we all wanted to hang out and drinks and drugs. I love all of it. But then some time went by, and my peer group began to get smaller, because the way I like to drink and the way I like to party was not consistent with societal norms. So nobody sent me a memo and said, hey, Dave, you're changing. You now are starting to drink more like an unhealthy person as opposed to a super social healthy person. And then it went even further, where in the end, I really just drank and partied alone, because most people didn't want to hang out with me. Because if you're going to go drinking with Dave, it's going to be many days. There's going to be, debauchery and potentially the law, and our wives are going to be mad at us. So people began to avoid me. Not only that, but other people became a hassle. So I ended up pretty much drinking in my garage near the end. And nobody sent me a memo and said, hey, Dave, this is pathetic. Hey, Dave, this is sad. Hey, Dave, this is fear and ego. However, I reached the point where I was like, all right, I need some help. I didn't even say help. I need to do something different. And I became a tiny bit willing. I was tiny bit willing to look at maybe there's some other system of life besides Dave's. And the first 40 years of my life, I lived 100% on Dave. During that time, I was baptized. I went to catechism. I'd been at church 1,000 times, but I was living on Dave. That was my fundamental system of life. And my system as an economist was to get more. And I tried to get more beer and more drugs and more money and more sex and more love and more stuff. And that's what I thought that was America. That's what you're supposed to do. And when you look on TV, that's who wins, the one who has, the most stuff. But I was becoming emptier and emptier as a human being, and succumbing more and more to fear, and succumbing more and more to evil. So I waved this white flag, and I went to a place for a little while, and I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know what to do. But they told me I should do 90 meetings in 90 days. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's so inconvenient. But at the same time, I did it. And after that, I did 30 days in rehab. I did a 90-day, every day, a meeting. And then after that, they gave me a coffee commitment at the Faith Lutheran Church. And they said, you got to be here by 6:15 every day to make coffee for the 6:45 meeting. And they ended up giving me a key to the church. And I remember when they gave it to me, I looked up for lightning. It didn't happen. But I went for 2 years to Faith Lutheran Church, and I made coffee for a bunch of ornery drunks. And during that time, I changed. And I was able to see beyond myself. And I've now learned that my entire system of living that I spent my first 40 years on was fatally flawed. And I've turned my whole system of living upside down. And it's no longer, can I get more sex, and can I get higher, and can I get more money? It's now, who could I help? How helpful can I be? And can I stay spiritually connected? And every morning I wake up and freaking Dave is there. And Dave, wakes up with a little terror and a little to-do list. And, what are we going to get for Dave? And I fall to my knees and I start every morning and I pray, and I go through 2 prayers. And the essence is like, thy will be done, not mine. What's your will? And if I'm thinking, hey, what do I want? I want to go get a grand slam at Denny's. That's what Dave wants when he wakes up in the morning. And, is that what you want? I think you should probably have some yogurt and go help some. I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And when I try to live on what, and call it, let's call it on what good, orderly direction. If I try to live in good, orderly direction rather than Dave, unquestionably, I get joy on a regular basis. And it's beautiful. To me, each day is an absolute blessing. Being able to do this podcast with you, to me, it's electric. It's magical. I'm hoping that someone ends up listening who says, I like to drink beer. And then, maybe some of that's ego. And maybe I could be of more service to my fellows if I didn't sleep in on weekends, but instead I went for a run and I got my body as healthy as I could be. And I focused more on service and helping other people, because the joy that comes with that is it's unquestionable.
What you talked about, you were just this fun social guy, and it started to shift. Where does it become an addiction? Where does it become a destructive compulsion, for people, from just, the college days to where it's just fun and this is what people do, until it's, how do you know when it's an addiction? Where does it cross over?
I mentioned that nobody sent me a memo a couple times, and I'm a little pissed that nobody did. Even though
good looking out, right?
Right. Well, even though my boss had tried to intervene on me once, and I remember when she sat down with me, she was the president of Health Plan Nevada, and I was, I think I was the chief operating officer at the time, and she sat me down and gave me a big talk, and I was like, I talked her out of it, and I was like, a good thing. I'm still slick. She tried to pin me, and I didn't let her. And I get to continue. What I didn't realize is that I got to continue more misery. My family tried to intervene on me as well. And I remember the time I'm like, what are you people telling me I have a problem? I have a bigger house than all of you. I have a great job. Don't be telling me that I can't have what I want. So I say I never got a memo, but in retrospect, I got plenty of memos. However, I was blind to them, and I was just trying really hard to talk them out of it. And when I was successful, because nobody handcuffed me, I assumed I must be right. So I used the two-part test that you compulsively use despite negative consequences. So if you're the kind of guy who has a glass of wine on Friday and you still have your job and you take care of your family, you take care of yourself, you take care of others, sounds like you're part of the 91.8% of America that doesn't have a substance disorder. However, if you find sometimes you go have a glass of wine and unbeknownst to you, you end up having 5 or you end up having 3 bottles, and it wasn't conscious. So if you find sometimes you drink when you didn't intend to, if you find sometimes you drink more than you intended to, those are indications that there's a problem. To me, a lot of people say, Dave, what do you do? How do you know? And there's this thing called a licensed alcohol drug counselor, and they do this magical thing called an assessment. And almost everybody nowadays has insurance, so you can call your insurance company. You don't have to tell anybody. They're compelled not to tell anybody. And if you're wondering, do I have a problem with alcohol? Go see a licensed alcohol drug counselor, do an assessment, have them tell you where you stand. You could not share it with anybody. It'll only be your information. Fortunately, due to CFR 42 and to HIPAA protections, it is y'all's secret. But why not get that information for yourself?
That's great. There's some scales and things they can tell you. There's a 95% chance that you have a substance use disorder and whatever. So it crosses over when it becomes, you start losing control of it. It becomes not fun. You went from party scene to drinking the 30 pack in your garage or whatever by yourself. And then just, maybe it started to creep into your professional life. I'm sure relationships, it just affects everything. there's nothing it doesn't really touch. You know, if you're drinking at night, who you are in the daytime is still affected because of alcohol. I mean, that's what I found for me, that I wasn't that terrible. I mean, I had DUI and another arrest, but it wasn't when I was drinking was the problem. It's when I wasn't drinking. I was the worst when I wasn't drinking. So it almost seemed like the medicine, you know, that 6-pack at night, no problem. But sometimes it was 24.
Right. I 100% agree. And to me, I started with the indication that the substance wasn't even the problem. The problem was really my thinking, and that, no, I had fear that it wasn't addressed. I had an ego that was blocking stuff out, and the relationships I had with my family, the relationship I had with my kid, it wasn't as authentic. If, you know, Sundays I'm hungover, I'm on the couch. Daddy, let's play. No, Daddy's tired. Daddy works. You know, to me, that isn't the daddy who's alive. You know, to me, I feel great on the weekends. I feel great during the week, and I'm able to be there for my kids, for my wife, for my family, for other coworkers. Even at work, when I was hungover, maybe I would have got the minimum I needed to do to say that I'm working. But was I helpful to my colleagues? You know, was I giving everything to my customers? You know, certainly not. If I was looking at my watch being like, is it almost 5? So there's a presence that has come with sobriety, a spiritual presence that's really the fruits of all this. Whether I was drinking or not, that's just a symptom of it. But the frame of reference change that has occurred, that's where
you made an interesting point there about that you'd really kind of been running your life on ego. It was all about Dave. But as you've matured through the recovery process, you really tried to turn that into, instead of self-indulgence, this is like selflessness, or, you know, service and sacrifice and things like that. I remember we never worked it out. I forget what happened during COVID. Dave invited me to go down into the tunnels. There's this whole network of tunnels underground. And I saw I think on his social media, he's down there in these, like, you know, work boots and jeans and just kind of walking around and trying to pull people out of there, because most of those I've seen on some of your TV programs, most of those folks are dealing with mental illness or substance use. And so to me, I mean, that's maybe outreach effort for, you know, some of the work that you do, but it's also, I don't know, that's very sort of Jesus-like, if you ask me. You know, you're down there offering people a way out of that. But anyway, my point was, from selfishness to selflessness, that's a big shift that you made.
You know, I'm going to tell you a story that it sounds crazy even to me, but you know, twice I tell myself that I won America. I became CEO of this publicly traded insurance company. I was getting $1 million a year. I certainly told myself that I was successful, that I would joke, I won America. But then I quit that job and I opened up a rehab. And for the first 5 years I ran the rehab, I lost money every year. And without question, it was the richest I'd ever been in my life. Every time I went to Smith's, or anytime I went, people would come up to me and say, thanks for getting my daughter back. You know, hey, thank you for getting my loved one. I wear sober shirts all the time. I'd have people walk up to me and be like, how could I get that? I'm like, you know what? It's available. And you know what? I have all day. I could sit and talk to you right now and tell you how to do it, or follow me. I could help you do it. So that was walking the walk. I wasn't just saying I want to help people. You know, I became, my actions followed it. But to me, nothing's clearer that I built Solutions to be a 400-bed treatment center, and I sold it to a New York Stock Exchange publicly traded company for a little over $20 million. I bought a house on the ocean in Del Mar. And again, I told myself, I won America. You know, I did what I'm supposed to do, what they tell you to try to do on TV. And I made the mistake of praying down at the beach, sun's coming up. And every morning when I pray, it became clearer and clearer. Like, Dave, you got to sell the beach out. You got to go help the homeless. And I was like, oh, that's so annoying. Really, can I just like put some money at the Salvation Army containers? I'm getting groceries. But it became, crystal clear to me. So I sold that beach house and I opened a nonprofit in downtown Las Vegas. And I've spent a ridiculous amount of money. We now have 75 staff. We help 30 unhoused get off the street every week. And, you will find me from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, on North Main Street in the worst part of town. They call it the Corridor of Hope, but it doesn't feel like that. But what I'm here to do is try to help Jesus's kids who were lost, and whether they're lost due to mental illness or they're lost to a substance use disorders, or it's neither of those, they're lost to their egos and fear. There's a way out. And what we find is that, we have 40 clinicians. So we really bring counseling to them. Our average length of treatment is 133 days. And lo and behold, if an unhoused person goes to counseling on an intensive basis for 133 days, we have astounding recovery rates. 87% of our clients become clean and sober, become employed, and become housed after it's a little over a 4-month treatment episode. So that's what I do every day. My walk, I'm walking the walk. Even though my dad, who passed last year, he's 100% capitalism. He's 100% ego. And he would look at me like, what are you doing? You sold the beach house to open up a place and give salaries to therapists who are trying to help the homeless. But just because he didn't understand what I learned doesn't mean that it isn't exactly.
Wow. That's impressive stuff, man. So give us a little bit of just an overview of the 12-step process. I mean, that's often what people get recommended to do. They don't know what it is. I didn't really know what it is. They hear it's a spiritually based program. And just in general, how did you come to the 12 steps? And just, I guess, a summarization of what it's about. What is this magic of the AA program?
Here's the 12 steps. First 3 steps, trust God. And the whole key about God, I used good, orderly direction earlier.
I picked that up.
It's not you. Okay? You're going to trust something besides you. So trust God. The next 2 words are steps 4 through 11. And that's clean house. We all got traumas. We all have sex problems. We all have fear. We all have ego. And we need to clean house and do a real spiritual inventory to be able to, address our stuff, because we can't help somebody if our cup's empty. So it's trust God, clean house. And then step 12 is help others. And to me, the first 164 pages of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a text. It's a basic text. It is how you could live your life. And anybody, you don't have to tell anyone, you could just get the book, you could read it. And if you are one of the 9.2% of Americans who have a substance use disorder, it'll probably resonate with you. And it'll take you through the trust God, clean house, help others process.
So how did you attend that for the first time? And what were your thoughts when you come in the door and you kind of see what this is about? By the way, I had some real trouble with God there for a while, and I had some bitterness and resentment that I didn't even know I had, but I used the group of drunks. That was was God to me for a while there, just to get me through an initial kind of phase. But when you showed up to those rooms, how did you take it? How did it go? I mean, was it weird? Did you have good experiences early on? And what was that like for you showing up?
The first time I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, which was well before I got sober, I went to a meeting, and it was a smoking meeting, and everybody was there smoking cigarettes. I've never smoked cigarettes. Now, I've smoked crack and I smoked cigars, but I'd never smoked cigarettes. So I was judging them. I'm like, this place is gross. These people are not me. And I sat there for a short period of time, and then I left, and I went and I got drunk. And I went home and I was like, I went to an AA meeting. So the first time I went, it didn't catch. The next time I went to rehab, and in rehab, we went every day. And after rehab, I was like, still not sure what to do. And they told me to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And to me, I'm hard-headed. So it was a real gradual process that occurred over 2 years where I began to live AA, and I began to really train myself behaviorally to live in the AA way as opposed to Dave's way. And granted, Dave's way was pretty ingrained in me. So it took a significant amount of time. And I tell this story that it was about 2 years before, if I didn't stub my toe, or if a person I loved said something hurtful to me, that my first thought wouldn't be Jack Daniels. And that was the case for quite some time. But after about 2 years, I began to change. And now when someone will say something hurtful to me, I'll pause and I'll say, oh, they're obviously hurting. I don't have to take that in. I wonder what's going on with them that they're saying this. Oh, that's a vitriol comment. So it just changed my whole frame of reference. Rather than be like, what do you mean I'm a piece of shit? And then tripping about it and being defensive, it's like a rabbit hole. Nothing good comes out of getting defensive something. I answer the question?
Yeah, just what early experiences got you committed to that? I mean, there must have been a time we said, holy shit, this is real and I want to be a part of this, and I need to be here. I talked about some of the experiences with you. I'm sitting in my truck, you're on the phone, we're reading from the 12 and 12, and that's when it was like, okay, there is something here to this. And for you, anything early on that kind of caught you and let it get in your system?
When I heard them all talking about God, I called it a fish on a bicycle, or giving a fish a bicycle. I'm trying to get my wife to nag me a little bit less. You people are, yammering on about God. I had zero interest or appetite or ability to be able to have that information. However, they were emphatic that it was as we defined it. It's not Jesus or Allah or Abraham or anything. It's whatever you define it to be. And I gradually, I recognize that humans, there's about 8 billion of us on the planet. More than half of us have a God of some kind in their life. So, a deity of some kind. So I recognize humans are, without a doubt, programmed or wired to be connected to something. And even though I have this ego, like, Dave's better than all 8 billion of them, I slowly became more open to the idea, and the fact that I got to define it ended up helping. So that ended up easing my protection, my fear, my ego, my resentment towards this idea of a God. And then in the second step, it talks about how if you just have a little bit of willingness, and I remember one time talking to this one, I'll call him a sponsor or counselor guy. He looked like Rod Stewart with that like weird mullet. But he, I asked him, I said, how do you pray? And he looked at me and he smiled and he says, well, why don't you find a quiet place? And why don't you get down on your knees and just be willing to hear. You could ask him some things, and I like, please and thank you. Thanks for your life. Please show me your will. I'd say, I'll ask him to keep me sober. And he stopped me and he said, no, sorry, that's your job. Your job's not to drink. What you could do is you could ask him for the willingness. You could ask God for the willingness to be sober. And I was like, okay. And what happened was the first time I earnestly tried. And I was like, all right, God, whatever. give me the willingness to be sober. And I felt a little more willing to be sober. And I didn't drink that. And I began to put them together. And I guess I became just a tiny bit willing, which again was just releasing ego, to being open to something spiritual that I got to define. And you know, on Friday night, my wife and I, we went to my rabbi's house for Rosh Hashanah dinner. We spent 2 hours there and went through all these Hebrew customs. I spent a lot of time with, I'll call him my Catholic pastor, priest. I consider myself a Christian. That's my current belief system, but it's the one I define. And really, if you're going to try this, I encourage you to define yours. Don't take mine. Don't take his God. Use your group of drunks, good orderly direction, whatever it is, because the answers that we seek are there.
As long as it's not you. That was
Correct.
profound for me. That I learned something right there, that whatever it is, as long as it's not you, because running your life on your program isn't very healthy.
Well, not if you're part of the 9.2% of Americans who are just wired to have a substance use disorder, like me.
So, one of the cool things that I learned from the 12-step program was the idea that, we have some basic needs. We have valid needs, like, what was it, like sex, society, and security or something like that. So we have these, they're normal needs, but I talk with my clients sometimes about, we all need to alter ourselves. And that's why I think substance abuse is such a problem, is because we it's predictable. We know exactly what's going to happen once we hit this or drink that. We know how we're going to feel. We know all of it, the taste, everything is so ritualized. But when people need to alter, meaning, they've had stress, they need to come home and check out and do something predictable. What kinds of things do you do now in a life of sobriety that allows you to alter yourself and like change your state, calm down, relax? What are those things that give you those, that meet those needs that you thought you were doing with alcohol?
A bunch come to mind. I opened with prayer, and that every day I need a little quiet time to pray. Normally I'd go into meditation right now, but I don't meditate that often, but I have, and it is wonderful. The next thing I would mention is fitness, and Carolina and I embody it. When we travel, we'll fly to some exotic city, and Carolina will wake up and have coffee, make our prayers, and Carolina will look at me and be like, "What are we going to PT today?" And it's really something we do every single day. If you go on a 5-mile jog, it's meditative. It is keeping you healthy. It's keeping your heart strong. And it also helps your mental health because your thoughts are being collected. So taking care of your physical self is a really instrumental part of my life right now. I'm turning 60 years old within the next year, and I'm happy with the vehicle that I get to go through this spiritual experience. And to me, something I'd kind of ask anybody, listen, it's your choice. What vehicle are you going through the human experience with? And if it isn't the vehicle that you're proud of and that makes you feel good, I'm going to say, what are you doing? And I box 3 days a week. I train physically 5 days a week, and I run just about daily with my wife in the mornings. And to me, the byproduct of that is my mental health is better, and that, I walk around feeling good about myself. And, to me, I tell the car joke, like, would you rather, go through life in a beat up Studebaker or an old truck, or would you rather go through, life in a Camaro? Why not go through this spiritual experience in a vehicle that you feel good about? So to me, fitness is deeply integrated into my recovery.
That was one of the things that you taught me. I remember at some point we were talking about, the will of God, and what, that I would have the courage to do what his will for me is. And we were talking about that, and you mentioned taking care of my body. So when I stopped drinking, I actually gained weight. I know a lot of people lose weight, but for me, that was like all of my calories. So I would wake up tired and drink Monster Energy all day, and then get off work at night and just pound the beer until I fell asleep. So, but I wasn't really eating. And then when I stopped drinking, and using nicotine, I had this hunger, and I gained all this weight. And you talked about that. I've actually lost 40 pounds. You can't tell because
Nice.
On Zoom, I look a lot thinner than I do in real life. But anyway, so you mentioned the body, and I see you on the social media. You're out there with your wife all the time. Like this is not just something that you do to show out. You're actually doing this stuff. I mean, 7 marathons and all these cool hikes. Does it become addictive? I mean, I guess that suggests it's bad, but you get a buzz from this. There's some...
Not only a buzz, but, and Carolina could attest to this, there's many days where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I have a 7:00 conference call, and I go, and then I have a dinner at the end, and I'm in my suit, and I come home and I look at her and I'm like, I just spent 14 hours in my suit, and I came home and I didn't get to work out today, and I'm pissy. And I'm grouchy about it. And I'm like, I'm going to try to be mindful to be able to make sure I get maybe a double or a triple in tomorrow. But I certainly get uneasy if one of those days where my whole day's packed and I don't get to do something, because it does happen. I live life. I have, I've been writing this pesky paper for school. I have a busy job. I serve on a bunch of boards. So sometimes people call and they're like, hey, could you do this? Hey, and I'm needed. So sometimes I don't get to work out, but the two of us, we support each other in making sure we take care of our physical self, which is deeply intertwined and ingrained with our mental self. So I do not think it is an addiction, because an addiction is something you do compulsively despite negative consequences. I don't think there's negative consequences for being healthy. I will say that as I get older, my pie hole becomes more important than the fact that I could bench 315. Now, it's just what you eat. The two of us, we just went out to lunch, and while we were walking, I was telling her, I said, what I wanted was a bacon cheeseburger and highly salted French fries, and what I ate was kale salad with some blackened salmon on it. And I told her, I said, while the immediate gratification while I was trying to swallow this crunchy kale wasn't as good, I know through the rest of the day I feel way better. And fortunately, being present of mind, which happens when I'm not drunk or hungover, happens so I can make better decisions about what I eat.
Wow, that's impressive, man. I wanted to ask about the involvement or the value of, just other men in your life. That's a big part of this program, is that you go into these rooms and you just kind of tell on yourself, and there's not a lot of feedback necessarily or crosstalk, I guess, but there's still the influence of other people. You're learning from other men and women, but talk about the value of the connections that come through group work and that kind of thing, and the kinds of men in your life who've helped you over these 18 years.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said men, because I'm a firm believer that in recovery that men should help men and that women should help women. I'm currently sponsoring 6 men who are calling me, and it's weird. All 6 happen to be lawyers at the moment. And I like that, because often they want to argue, hey, it's okay if I still drink. And I'm very happy to sit back and have that, legal discourse with them. but sponsoring people brings me joy, keeps me grounded, and it's something that I'm capable of doing. And, while I'm here on this planet, if somebody comes up to me and needs sponsorship to get into recovery, I generally am going to say yes. I want to help people get clean. It's why I'm here. We're Carolina and I, we value, and I get this from her, our home and our family. So I don't hang out with other men as much as I used to. I hang out with my wife. However, we have, I have a bunch of men in my life. We go out with these 3 other men for dinner about every 2 months. And to me, there's sorry if this is long, I'll try to do this really quick. I remember sneaking out just before I got clean. My wife had gone to sleep and I snuck out and I went to hang out with my 3 best buddies. And I got to their house. The wife must have been gone because the 4 of us were there. And we put all this alcohol and some drugs down and we just did them until 5 a.m. when the sun was coming up. And when it happened, I realized that none of us had said a word during that 8-hour period of time while we were like pounding drinks and doing drugs. And I'm like, in my heart, I felt like these were my closest blood brothers. But, if I called one of them because I was stuck, they each probably would have been busy. But if I would have called each one and said, hey, I got a Ziploc baggie, they would have made themselves available. Well, the friends I have right now are so much more authentic and our relationship is so much deeper and we know about each other's families. We know about our struggles. We call each other on our bullshit, which is so important. So, you're on to something. These relationships we have with other men or for females with other females are really important to help us because I don't know if everybody, but I have the ability to delude myself and having close people who could lovingly say, no, Dave, you're full of shit is really helpful.
That was one of the things you said to me a couple of times. You said like, oh, is this the story you're telling yourself? Is that your story? And I just felt so embarrassed because I wanted to be a good student. I wanted to do the right thing. And then interestingly, after I had been to meetings and I was going for maybe several months, but I drank. But I kept saying that I hadn't because I had slipped, and kind of relapsed a little bit again. And I remember coming to the meeting and just sharing that and saying, I've lied for the last 6 weeks or whatever it is, and I slipped back in and whatever, but it was just all warm. It was just all welcome. It was just all like, we've been there and we understand. That was another thing that you did to help me was just to share some of your own stuff. You told stories about how you had been terrible in the past and what you did to work through that. It was just great. Talk about the sponsorship kind of relationship or the, a mentor or whatever. It doesn't have to even be through AA, but to have another man, how does a guy pick someone to work with and whether it's in the program or not, just how do you let someone know can I lean on you?
Well, one adage we use is we don't shoot our wounded. So if somebody slips, we're not mad at them. I actually tell this story that, recovery is we're all in a boat and we're looking and we all have our own food. We got a place to sleep and everybody in the boat of recovery is fine and happy. And while we're, singing Kumbaya or whatever, somebody in the back of the boat looks out over the ocean and says, you know what? I think I can make it. And they dive off the boat. And all of us look over and say, that's terrible. We feel so bad. Brad dove off the boat. And one of 2 things happens. After a little while, this person comes flopping back to the boat and they say, oh my God, it was terrible. I lost my limb or I lost my driving privileges or I lost my spouse or I lost all this money. Terrible things happen. And we all say the same thing. We're so glad you're here. And we pull them back in the boat. And then we talk about it and we're there for each other. And while we're all there getting ready to sing Kumbaya again, Somebody else in the boat says, I think I can make it. And to us, it's absurd that once you got into recovery, why earth would anybody want to leave who was rational and of sound mind? But it happens on a regular basis, but we don't shoot our wounded. We welcome whoever wants this gift that was freely given to us to be given to them, and we're happy to do it. Now, in AA or NA or HA or CMA, which is a fun one, in any of those fellowships, the way to get a sponsor is to go to a meeting and look for a person who has what you want. To me, I remember, seeing a guy in a meeting and I used Yoda as an example, and I was like, how is that guy Yoda? And then somebody told me, said, because he has a year clean. I was like, that's amazing. I couldn't imagine that. And I decided to go ask Yoda if he would take me as a sponsor. And he said yes. He poked me in the chest and he gave me an assignment. So the way to get a sponsor in one of the fellowships is to go to a meeting, find somebody who has what you want, and ask him.
Wow. Well, that's what I did. I heard you speak. I heard you talk. I heard you were writing and doing all this stuff with your PhD and just all the things you've done professionally. And I found a lot of respect for you through that. I want to just maybe wrap up here in a few minutes with the last topic about helping others. So, that's what you did. I remember feeling like, well, this guy's so busy. He's got a lot going on. What is he doing on this Facebook group? And I hadn't seen you much there or heard you saying much, but you responded to me when I was asking for some help with my addiction. And then, but the step 12 stuff and just reaching out, you do that everywhere, all day, everywhere you go. I saw where you were last night on social media and the night before and all the things that you're always speaking and presenting and sharing and inviting people. How has that kept you in your recovery?
It's kept me useful. As I mentioned, I'm not counting specifically, but in our clinical practices, we recently passed 10,000 people we've helped. And to me, my choice was I could have smoked more cigars at my beach house, or I could help more God's kids. It's a no-brainer. So I am open about my story. I'm wearing a shirt that says crackhead mindset.
I just caught that about 10 minutes ago. I was like, I got to get a picture.
I'm not embarrassed of the fact that I used to drink or the fact that I used to do drugs. I was rescued from a hopeless state of mind and body, and somebody freely gave it to me. And if I could freely give it to somebody else, it is my duty. It's an honor. And as we learn in the 12 steps, it also helps keep us clean. So to me, the whole process is divine. I'm grateful for each day. And I hope somebody watching this calls and says, hey, could you help? Because I'd be honored to help them.
Yeah. So talk about that. What program you would, send people to? What's your number one, outreach thing? We'll get your social media and some of that stuff, but how do people, if they want help in the Las Vegas area?
I'm on all social. I'm on Be Real and TikTok, and Snapchat and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter or X now. And Dave Marlon is my name. I'm open about that. My phone number is 702-234-1356. You can text me or call me. I check every email every single day. I get about 400, but it's a habit I picked up when I was the CEO of an insurance company, that you do every email every single day. It's one of my daily disciplines. So if you email me or text me, I'll get back to you. Now, sometimes, like if it's a female, of course I'm going to want to help you, but the way I'm going to help you is I'm going to connect with somebody who can help you. If I'm not saying I need to sponsor every human in the world. However, if anybody needs help, I'll help you connected. I'll help you get connected. And to me, insurance, they determine who could treat who. So depending on your insurance might direct where you're going to go get care. You might need to start with a a physiological separation, which we call detoxification. You might need to do inpatient detox. But guys like you or I, we could help assess that and then help direct people to a place where they can get help.
So the main idea is that people just need to open their mouth. They just need to show some kind of willingness, some kind of interest. And if they're ready when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? You say something, that's what I did. And it like fell out of the sky, an opportunity to attend a meeting with you and other professionals. And I'm just very thankful for. I've referred probably 10 or 12 guys to that exact meeting since then. So Dave, I just really appreciate you, man. You are something else. I know that you have done just so many colorful, amazing, impactful things in the world. I know you're not perfect, but I know you're trying to do the right things. The next right thing is always on your mind. And when I sit here with you, and as I've talked with you through meetings for a long time there, I haven't attended those lately, by the way, but maybe I'll have to come back in and report how I'm doing. But I just appreciate your time, your willingness. This here is an outreach effort. You know, this is going to be out there forever, like all the other things that you do. He's been on TV. He's got his own. You got some TV thing you're doing now?
Yeah, we did Vegas Stronger Works. We did 15 episodes. It went real well. It was on Channel 7 on the local TV, but it's like this podcast. It resides on YouTube forever. Check it out. One thing I always want to say is that there's over 100,000 people in the Vegas Valley who are dependent on pills. And if you took a pill yesterday and said, man, this is the last time I'm doing this, and you find yourself going to take that pill again and you're trying to block it out and lie to yourself or whatever, you don't have to do that. There's a way to get help. Call somebody like Brad. Call somebody like me, and give us the opportunity to help you.
You guys were talking about this topic today. I threw a bunch of names out. We contacted a bunch of people to do this 9-episode series on addiction and recovery, and the first one who responded was Dave Marlon, and I'm just really happy about that because of the impact that you had on me personally, and that. I'm seeing 50 people a week, and I run 5 men's groups. And so the influence and some of the very things that you've taught me, I've continued teaching. Some of those men are now years into sobriety. And so the good that you're doing in the world is just tremendous. I appreciate all that you do, and have to also thank your lovely wife for, her example and the good that she does on her own as well. Maybe we'll have to have you guys back to do a couples show. When I have more microphones and stuff, we'll set it up better for everybody. But thank you again, man, for being here. Dave Marlon, just one of the best that I know. The alpha is not a personality type. It's a man who's operating from his best. He's operating from his highest state, his king, his warrior, his magician, his lover. This is a person who exemplifies that in every regard. So you guys, until next time, no excuses. Alpha up.
Thanks, bro.
Yes.
That was super.
That's so good.
If you're a man that controls his own destiny, a man that is always in the pursuit of being better, you are in the right place. You are responsible. You are strong. You are a leader. You are a force for good. Gentlemen, you are the Alpha, and this is the Alpha Quorum.